In. Good evening, everybody. How are we all doing? Alex Chisnell here, hosting for the Festival of Enterprise. I am joined by Chris Croft, as you can see.
Hi, everybody.
And we are both coming live and direct from Poole in Dorset. Separated by one house, in fact.
You can always look out the window and see Alex. It's very weird.
It was really sunny earlier. It's clouded up now, I'm afraid to say.
Yeah.
Right then, where's everybody else today? Let us know where you are broadcasting from. We have got Greg from Poland. We've got Simran. We've got Shirley from Kent. Simran's in Coventry, sorry. Got Fox in Surrey. Another one from Kent. Daniel in Budapest, in Hungary. Tony in Barcelona. Alpas from India. This is Natasha from South Africa. What's going on today? We have literally got the most diverse international audience I've seen in 120 webinars that I've hosted over the last 8 weeks.
Yeah, that's something to do with the fact that I'm always going on about how much I love India. It's just the most amazing country. If you've never seen India, you've got to go there. It's brilliant.
Yeah, I'm lucky enough to have gone there, I have to say.
Although Budapest is pretty great as well, gotta say. Party town. Loved Budapest.
Budapest, had a great time there as well. David Blower from my hometown of Wales, welcome. Sedgit.com from Ireland, Amanda from Warwick, T from Bucks, my birthplace, in fact, Buckinghamshire. People from all over. This is awesome. Thank you all so much for tuning in at this time. We thought we'd see what a difference a 5 p.m. slot would make. So we are talking how to work out your optimum selling price. So to give you a bit of an intro, getting your price right is the biggest thing you can do to increase your profit. Should you be cheaper and sell more or sell less, but with a bigger margin? Chris is going to show us how to work it out today. Now, Chris is one of the UK's leading trainers. To date, he's trained some 87,000 people. It's going to be more than that since we wrote that down for sure. 6 million online, enjoys a 94% rate of repeat business. So he's also a successful author, book on time management, published back in 96, and 14 others. Is that right? 14 others.
Yes, I've been bunging loads of. There's no money in books. I do them for fun, really. There's definitely no money in books, but I'm not bitter because there is money in online training. That's much better. Absolutely,
100%. So recently, Chris has also been making videos, more than 80 on his YouTube channel, and of course on LinkedIn Learning, where he's got 23 courses as well. So lots of places where you can find out more about Chris and interact with Chris. Before you dive into your presentation, Chris, do you want to set the scene?
What, about me or about the presentation?
Whatever comes into your head, the view outside of our window, the trees, I don't mind.
Just to say that I've been fascinated by pricing for ages. And when I started to get a bit of money coming in from my LinkedIn Learning videos, I decided to get rid of some customers who I didn't really like. And I decided to put the price up. I thought, I'm not going to work Fridays anymore. And I put the price up on my customers who I didn't like. And all of them said, yeah, all right, we'll pay the extra. I didn't lose a single customer. And so my first thought was, great, I can make a bit more money. And then my second thought was, I should have done this years ago. What was I thinking? And my third thought was, damn, I've still got to work Fridays. And so I've been experimenting since then with prices and thinking a lot about this. And so this talk is kind of tries to understand pricing. And I'm going to come at it from 4 different directions in this talk. And I hope at least one of the sections really strikes a chord with you and you think, yeah, I get that now. So it's going to be a slightly long, crazy talk, but it'll change your life because you can make a lot more money if you charge the right prices. So I don't often talk about this subject really, because this is more about me than I normally teach project management, but my question is, what should I be charging for my project management courses? And so I've been experimenting and learning myself. And so this talk is not what I normally do, but I think it's such an important subject. I've not really seen this stuff anywhere else. So I hope it makes a difference to all of you guys out there who are watching this. I really hope it helps.
Yeah, no, it comes at a good time for me because I've just started. I just changed the price on my only online product, which is a podcasting course, and I'm just wondering, what the hell should I price it at? Because the platform that hosts it are going, you should be charging a lot more than that, and I'm thinking, I don't know. And then just about to launch an online mentorship program as well, and again, it's the same discussion with my right side of my brain and my left side of my brain. What do I charge? So this will be a really useful exercise because I'm looking at launching it next week. So this has come at a good time for me. Anyone else, let us know your questions, bit of housekeeping, chat box there where you've been entering your name and where you're from. Any questions to Chris, pop them in there and we will get to them by the end of the webinar.
Yes,
let us know, are you struggling with pricing at the moment? Are you all set with pricing? Are you happy with your pricing? Let us know. Let's have a conversation on here.
Yep, I love it when people put comments in the chat box, even if they put he's talking rubbish or I love this or, why has he just said that? It's great because at least I know you're out there because otherwise I'm talking into nothing, And I think there's, how many have we got? A few hundred people or something there, Alex, probably? I don't know. But I can't tell. I'd rather have a live audience, really.
No, I know it's funny, isn't it? Because I'm used to live physical audiences. And you can obviously, the questions come back pretty quick, and you look somebody in the eyes, and you can ask them a question, and you kind of feed off that energy. And we will have anywhere I think from 200 to 300 because we're now broadcasting on Twitter, on Facebook, and YouTube live all at the same time. And I know we've literally doubled and then tripled our audience via Facebook and Twitter. So we'll get those of you who've registered for this webinar, you'll get your questions here. Those of you who are watching on the other platforms, if you want to register and jump on here, we can see your questions then. So a couple of ones here while Chris brings his slides up maybe. T says, perfect timing for me. I feel like everyone just puts their finger in the air and blags what they charge. Garfield's pinged in from Lewisham. How are you doing again, Garfield? Thank you for joining us. Simran Vim says, I've always struggled with pricing. And when I ask others for advice, they tend to give vague answers. So hopefully I can learn something about pricing today. No, hopefully about it, really, Simran. It's happening.
Absolutely. So we're doing it, and I'm going to press share and see what happens. So how is that, Alex? Can you see a big thing saying profit equals?
No, we can see a blue screen, which I guess is your desktop. And maybe you need to double click on one of those icons. Here we go. Got it.
Great.
Don't do anything else. Don't do anything else. That's brilliant.
Are you seeing two rectangles or are you just seeing one at the moment?
All we've got at the moment, one big rectangle. There you go. Profit equals income plus. Oh, you just took that away from me.
So have you got just profit equals? Is that what you've got?
Yes, sir. That's all we've got.
Great. It's working. The technology is working. Right. I'm off then. Ready?
Yeah.
Ready? People from all over the world. Let's do this. So if you think about what your profit equals, if you want to maximize your profit, which is kind of the name of the game, isn't it? It seems to me that your profit equals, actually, can I just ask, can you see the pointer, Alex, as I point? Is there any point in me pointing?
Let's have a look.
If I move around like that?
No.
Or like that?
Oh, yes, we can. It's just, when it goes into the black bit.
When I go
there we go, got it.
Okay, so your profit equals your income minus your costs. And your income is the quantity that you sell times the price you sell it. That's sort of obvious, isn't it? So, you sell 100 for 10 quid, you've got 1,000 quid coming in, your costs are 900 quid, you've made 100 quid or whatever it is. And my question is, which one is easiest to change? If you want to make more profit, what are you going to do? And it seems to me obvious that price is easy to change. You can change your price at the click of a mouse on your website, or you can just start quoting different prices from now. But to sell more, that's much more difficult. I mean, clearly it's worth working on your sales skills, and that's great, but it's hard to do. And similarly, to cut your costs is not easy. And quite often when you cut your costs, you end up cutting your quality and then you don't sell so many. But price, you can change your price and nothing else is affected. So price is absolutely vital to get right. And that's what we're going to explore in this talk. So that's the first thing. So let's just imagine now that you are selling £100,000 worth. Let's say this is thousands of dollars, pounds, whatever it might be. And let's suppose that your costs are 90. So how much is your profit? Well, your profit is 10. You're making 10% profit there, aren't you? So that's fine. Now, what would happen if you cut your price by just 5% in order to sell more? What would happen if you cut that 100 down to 95 in order to sell more? And of course, what it's done is it's reduced your profit margin significantly. And the question is, how much more will you sell? Will you sell twice as much? If you cut your price from 100 to 95, will you double your sales? And the answer is surely not. I'd be absolutely amazed if you doubled your sales by cutting your price by only £5 in this example. So therefore, you shouldn't do it, because you're halving your profit, aren't you? Your profit, if you cut your price from 100 to 95, you're only making a profit of 5 now. And you've got to sell double for it to be worth it, and you won't. So the first thing is, don't cut your price in order to sell more. But it does raise the thought, do you know what your margin is? Do you know what your costs are? Do you know whether you're making a 10% or a 20% or a 50% margin? And, you know, so I do training courses. I drive around the country and I charge, let's say I charge £1,000 to do a training course. And to me, it feels like complete profit. I sort of think, well, I got a bit of petrol. It's my only cost. But actually, there are probably lots of costs I haven't thought about, like all my traveling time and all my preparation time and you know, maintaining my photocopiers and all the marketing, my website. So often we don't think about all of our costs, and we don't realize that we have this big red column here. And we think, well, I can cut my price a bit. It's fine. But actually, you're eating into a much smaller profit margin than you realize. So something to think about is, do you know what your margin is? And we're talking about your net margin, of course, not your gross margin. And just to clarify briefly the difference between those, if you buy something for £500 and you sell it for 1,000, you know, then you've made a £500 gross profit. That's great. But when you take into account your marketing and the cost of, you know, your shop and the heating and the training of your staff and all that stuff, then you take off all of those, then you get your net profit. So your net profit is usually only 5 or 10% in most companies, whereas your gross profit, quite often you're doubling the price of something. So it's 50% gross margin if it's cost you 50 and you sell it for 100. So gross and net profit are very different. And we're talking net profit here after all of your costs. So the first thing is, don't cut your price in order to sell more, because it will cost you much more than you gain. Now, what about raising your price? What about if I raise my price by just 10% in this example? So it goes from 100 to 110. What will happen? Well, I probably will sell a bit less. A few people are going to think, well, I would have paid 100, but I'm not paying 110. A few people will do that. But what's happened to my profit margin? And the answer is I've doubled it. So I can afford to lose half my customers and still make the same money. And if I lose less than half, if I only lose 10 or 20 or 30% of my customers by putting my price up to 110, I've made more profit. And I think you'll agree that almost certainly by raising my price from 10%, I'm not going to lose half of my customers. So I've put here, would you lose half your customers? If no, you should do it. And if you think about the price of anything, I mean, I'm looking at this can of Coke I'm holding here, which was, I don't know, was it 70p? If it was 77p, would I have thought, oh, I'm not going to buy that? Or if there's a shirt for 20 quid, if it was £22, would you think, oh, I'm not going to spend 22? That 10%, we almost certainly don't notice. And I was talking to a friend of mine who does sort of building work. And if he charges somebody £600, quotes them £600, if you quoted them 660, is that really going to make a difference? There's not going to be many customers who say, I would have paid 600, but I'm not paying 660. So I don't think you're going to lose many customers at all when you put your price up by 10%. And you're doubling your profit margin if you do that. And I put here as well that the few customers that you do lose will be the worst ones. Because the guy who said, I'm not going to pay $660 for that job, the person who's obsessed by price and is maybe shopping around for the cheapest one, is almost certainly going to be the biggest pain. And I think we'd all agree that the customers who we have who are most fussy about price are the biggest pain in the arse. Do you agree with that? Put yes in the comments if you do. And I think the reason why is because people who are obsessed by price don't understand quality. They don't care about you. They don't want a relationship. They just want the cheapest. And those sort of people who don't understand quality are always going to be a pain. They're always going to be chipping away and complaining, aren't they? So we don't want them anyway. So put your price up by 10% and make more money from everybody else. So there are all lots of yeses in there. I love it. So that's really the first of my 4 ways of looking at it. The others are going to get a bit more complicated as we go, but I think that's the first thing. That's quite an amazing thought, isn't it? That 10% profit margin. By the way, I'll just go back a moment. Most companies do make 10%. And the reason for that is if you were making, say, 30% net profit, what would happen is that more people would come into your space. More people would think, well, that's profitable. I'm going to start making, podcasts or whatever it is. And they would drive your profit back down to 10%. So the way business is that people tend to go into markets that are profitable and drive them down to 10. We don't go below about 5% because it's not worth the hassle. You might as well put the money in the bank. So businesses tend to make between 5 and 10%. So that is why your margins are probably 10. But if you sneak them up to 11, 12, 13, you can make a big difference to your profit. So let's look at the second way of thinking about this. Now, you've probably all heard of the Pareto principle, which says the top 20% of your customers bring in 80% of your profit. And so I think we would agree with that. And it might be that they're bigger or they're nicer or they're more profitable or you get a good price for them, whatever it is. So we've got our top 20%. Now, then we've got the other 80% of our customers who only bring in 20% of our profit. It has to be like that because that's the 100%. Think of that as £100 of profit. Okay, so £80 comes from your favorite 20% of customers. It might only be one customer, or it might be a small number. If you've got 100 customers, it'll be 20 of your customers bringing you £80. And these other ones, all these other ones are only bringing you £20. Now, let's have a closer look at these ones here. They're still profitable, but let's look at them more closely because we can divide them down. So these 80% who bring us 20% of our profit, what's probably happening is that these ones are bringing in £30. These ones are bringing in nothing. And these ones are loss making. They're bringing in minus 10. So the total from this group, we're getting plus 20. We've got 80 over here, of course. And I bet that you've got some loss-making customers. And I'm just looking at some of these comments coming in. Combined price increase implementation with value calculation. Ooh, yeah. Well, I'll come to that a bit later, I think. Yeah. How do you work a few days a week, Chris, with the amount? Yeah, right. So the answer is I work really hard, but it's okay because I love it. But that's another subject. Right. So let's go back to this. Now, when I do this live with people, I always say, hands up who reckons they've got some loss-making customers. And people always say, well, I reckon I have. Everybody has got some loss-making customers. And why? And it's because we hope they'll become profitable in the future, or it's because we didn't realize they're going to be loss-making. They turned out to be a total nightmare when we took the job on. Or maybe a salesperson sold it when they shouldn't have. A mistake was made. I think there's all kinds of reasons why you might have loss-making customers. Maybe they're in a sector which you want to get into and you sort of tell yourself it's strategic, but really it's just a mistake. So the question is, what are we going to do about these? We've got 80 quid here, 30, nothing, and minus 10. What are we going to do about these? And it seems to me that firstly, it's a no-brainer. Oh, actually, yes, before I get to that, I've put here, do you know which ones are which? Do you know who your loss-making customers are? You may think you do, but you might get a surprise, actually. And I'm going to come back to how to work that out in a minute. Because obviously, if we could identify these, we could target them, couldn't we? But we absolutely have to know who they are. We need to know that. Anyway, what should we do with the loss-making customers? And the answer is, get rid of them somehow. If you just rang them all up and told them to F off, you would make an extra £10 a week or whatever, because you wouldn't be making the loss. But I've got a better plan than that, because that's rude and not a very good idea. So why not just put the price up on those customers and say, we've done some calculations and this contract for all sorts of reasons is just not profitable for us, I'm afraid. So unfortunately, we've got to put the price up. And if they leave, then that's up to them. It's their choice. And you've made an extra £10. And if they say, oh, all right, yeah, we'll pay more, then they've become profitable. And that's a result as well. You win either way. And I did this a while ago. I put the price up on all the customers who I didn't like. So I wasn't quite as scientific as working out who was loss making. I just put the price up on all the ones I didn't like. And half of them left and the other half paid the extra. And it was a result either way. I got more time and saved the loss making and got paid better on the others. So that's the first thing that's absolutely a no-brainer you must do. Identify your loss making customers and put the price up on those. There's no risk. The worst that'll happen is they'll leave. Now, what about the ones who are breaking even? Well, I'm going to say the same thing. Put the price up. What's the point of a customer who only breaks even unless you like them? So put the price up on those as well. They'll either pay it or they'll leave, and that's fine. Now, these ones, it gets a bit more scary. Really, you probably should put the price up on them, because even if they left, you still got 80% of your profit in only 20% of the time. Wouldn't it be brilliant to be paid 80% of what you get paid now? In fact, if you're furloughed, ironically, you're actually doing this. Because if you're furloughed, you're being paid 80% for doing absolutely nothing. So that's a good deal. But in terms of customers, it's the same sort of thing, isn't it? If you just got rid of all of this, you could earn 80% of what you earn now and only do 20% of the work. You could work 1 day a week. So that is a no-brainer. So I don't think you've got too much to risk by putting the price up on these ones. But if that's too worrying, at least tell me you'll do it on these. And that's well doable, isn't it? So that's another way of looking at all this. Prices up, basically. A couple of other thoughts. You could think about tradables. So you could start saying that they've got to order more in one go. They've got to order further ahead. The meetings are going to be at your place rather than theirs. There might be all kinds of other things apart from just what you're doing and what the price is. You might be able to make the deal better. Maybe they pay up front or whatever. So there are all sorts of tradables as well as just price. I wanted to mention that. And you need to have walk away power. So if somebody won't pay your price, you need to have the strength to just say, well, in that case, forget it. And that means having a certain amount of mental power, but also having systems so that you know what your walk away point is. And if you employ salespeople, they need to know at what point they're going to walk away as well. So you have to have rules for that. You have to measure what's going on. And if you've got a full pipeline of customers, then, of course, it makes it much easier to say, well, if you won't pay, that's okay, because we've got other customers. So that will make you feel stronger. And getting a full pipeline, that's a whole other subject. But really, even if you don't have a full pipeline and you feel very weak, you should still put your price up on the ones that break even or are loss-making, because you don't want them. Okay, so that is the second way that I've been thinking about all of this. Now, I want to go on to the third one now, and it's going to get a bit bigger now. I want to start by saying some of your jobs or your customers are loss-making, and you don't know which ones they are. Common culprits will be things like it's got low margins, but it's a big job and it contributes to our fixed costs. I bet you've said that before, or your boss has said that. We'll explore that in a minute. Another culprit is it's a very small job, but it's a good margin. But of course, we actually use the same amount of fixed costs or similar. So, setting up the order at the beginning and dealing with the customer and shipping and all those things are probably the same for a small customer as they are for a big customer. So although it looks like it's a good margin, it could actually be a loss maker. And I'm going to show you an example of this now. So let's have a look at this. I want to go back. One more time, you instantly attribute to a particular job. So it's the labor and the materials. So I'm holding a can of Coke here. The variable cost, or the direct cost of making this Coke, was the can, which is probably about 3p, and then the Coke inside, which is probably another 3p. And I guess maybe there was some labor involved in making it. It's probably pretty automated, but the variable cost is very low. It could be an hourly rate for the machinery to run that, but obviously it makes about 1,000 or 1,000,000 cans of Coke an hour. So per can, it's very, very cheap. And it might be the cost of buying stuff in and shipping it out again. So those are the costs directly attributable to a product. Okay. And normally those are accurately known because you know what your material cost is and you know what your labor cost is. So when I do a training course, my direct cost is paper and petrol to drive to a customer. And I know what that is. I can measure that. Then I've got my fixed costs, which are sometimes known as indirect costs. And this is everything else: accounts, HR, IT, buildings, heating, marketing, all that stuff. You know, the cost of my website. Now, I know what my website costs, but it's hard to apportion that across all my customers. And a lot of this stuff, I don't even know what it costs, really. I mean, the time to design a training course, who knows? And for a can of Coke, most of the cost is probably marketing, but also customer service, handling complaints, all that sort of big lump of fixed costs. So, okay, so our total costs are all of that. But the problem is it's not very easy to apportion these to a particular customer. And therefore, it's difficult to work out whether a customer is profitable or not. So we know these in total, but it's hard to apportion them. So a high maintenance customer might well use more HR time or more customer service time. Maybe the salespeople spend more time with them, but we don't really measure that. Not unless everyone has timesheets, and you don't want to go there. So how do we work it out? And I'm going to show you this now. What you do, I'm going to read through this very quickly, and I'll show you an example that will make it clearer. So you list all your customers. For each one, you put the direct costs. That's easy. And then you estimate the indirect costs. How much do you think of your time, your marketing, etc., is spent on each customer? Add it all up and see if it comes to the total cost. I bet it doesn't. I bet if you add up the time you spend on each customer, it doesn't come to the total of all your time, because we always underestimate it. We always think, oh, well, I don't spend long with that person, but actually you do. Just try looking at the email thread for something you sold recently. You'll find there's hundreds of emails backwards and forwards. You forget how much time and work is involved in looking after customers. So add up the totals. I bet they don't. And then add a bit more to each one until the totals agree, and then see what you've got. I'm going to show you an example of how you do that now, okay? So let's say I've got 3 customers, Albatross, Budgie, and Cormorant, and this is how much money they're paying me, 55, 30, and 15. So I've got 100 coming in. And then my direct costs for doing Albatross are 37. Budgie is only 8. So that looks profitable. Cormorant is 5. That looks pretty profitable. So Albatross is not very profitable. It's low margin, but they're big. And Cormorant is the smallest, but looks like a good margin. And you remember I was saying that these are the dangerous ones. So let's explore them a bit more. So suppose I estimate my fixed costs are 15 for them, 9 for them, and 6 for them. And that kind of makes these okay, doesn't it? Just about. But then when I add this up, I sort of think, well, that comes to 30. But I know my total costs are more than 80. I know that my total costs are actually 95. So therefore, I've got to spread another 15 across these customers. So I go back and I have another think about these fixed costs. And let's say I add another 5 to each customer, because Cormorant does actually take me just as much extra time as Budgie and Albatross. So if I add an extra 5, I've now got fixed costs of 20, 14, and 11. So my total now is 57, because obviously I've got my 20 plus my 37 there, haven't I? So my total costs here are 57, 22, and 16. And that comes to the correct total now of all my costs. But you can see the problem I've got is that Albatross is actually loss-making. Because the margins were pretty tight and there was a bit more fixed cost than I realized, Albatross becomes loss-making. Budgie's still all right. And Cormorant, because he's only small, you know, I thought I was making, that was 11. I thought I was making 4, but actually there's another 5 to be put on Cormorant. So Cormorant is actually costing me 16. I'm losing 1 on Cormorant. So these small ones, they don't need much fixed cost to be added to become non-profitable. So that's how you do the exercise. How much money's coming in? What's the direct cost of servicing them? Guess your fixed costs. See what your total's like. If your total's not quite right, add on the extra that you have to spread it. You don't have to spread it equally, of course. You could spread it however you like between them, and then see in the end who's loss making and who isn't. And I bet you get some surprises. That is a fascinating exercise to do. Really worth doing. It's only a spreadsheet, won't take you long. Think of it as a game, and then you can target those loss making customers. Okay, so that is that. So list your customers, put the direct costs, estimate the indirect, add up the totals. Do they come to the total? They probably don't. I bet they don't. Add a bit more. Now, which ones are loss making? Okay, that's an exercise you can do later. And remember, you can always come back and watch this whole thing again. If I lost you there, if you want to watch it again, make notes or whatever, you can come back. That's right, isn't it, Alex? They can always come back and watch this as many as they like.
Correct.
Yeah. Get your colleagues, say to your boss, you need to have a look at this, whatever. Put the price up on the loss makers. Right. Now I want to go on to the next section. Now, oh yeah, I love this section. Imagine if you quote somebody £600 and they go, okay, yes, I'll go for that. That means they would have paid more. It means you didn't quote them enough. Now, maybe 600 was absolutely their limit and you happened to hit it exactly. They wouldn't have paid 601 even, but it's highly unlikely, isn't it? The chances are they would have paid 605 and you quoted them 600 and they thought, oh, great. Maybe they would have paid 620, 650. Maybe they would have paid 2,000. You don't know. But it's highly unlikely that that was exactly right. So every customer that accepts a price would have paid more, or is 99% of customers would have paid more. You've left money on the table with every person who says yes to your price. But the problem is how much? How do we get our head around that? So I'm going to show you a way of working this out now. So let's suppose that you could read the mind of all of your customers and you could line them up in order of how much they would pay. Okay, so this one here is a total cheapskate. They would hardly pay anything for your product. They don't get how brilliant you are. And therefore they won't pay very much. Or maybe they're just very mean or poor. And then these ones pay more and more and more. And at the end here, you've got a few who will pay loads. Either they love you or they're just very rich and stupid. I'm not sure which. Maybe they can spot a good thing and they understand the value of good things. For whatever reason, they're prepared to pay, well, almost probably twice as much as this person's prepared to pay. Okay, so you can read the mind of your customers and here they are all lined up. And let's suppose that this is your costs. This is how much it costs to provide this product or service that you're providing to these customers. Now, obviously, this person is not prepared to pay even your costs. And I've had people who've said, will you do a training course? And we can only afford 200 quid. And I'm thinking, well, the petrol and the hotel to come travel to you and stay overnight and do the course is going to cost more than 200. So it's just not going to happen. And, you know, it's not their fault or mine. Maybe that's all their budget is. Maybe they've got hardly any money for whatever reason. So this is not going to happen. Now, this person can just afford to pay your cost. And all these people are prepared to pay more than your cost. So the question is, what price should we charge? So let's look at price number one. Suppose we charge this as price number one. What will happen? And the answer is that these two people here, well, and these obviously, these first four are going to say, well, I'm not paying that because it's more than they're prepared to pay. Everyone else is going to think, yeah, I'll pay that. In fact, these people are thinking, blimey, that's cheap. Whew, I would have paid much more than that green amount. So the answer is you're going to get 80% of your quotes are going to come in with a yes. But what have you lost? And the answer is you've lost this whole triangle of money here, haven't you? All that money you could have had. So this is you quote the 600 and they say yes, but they would have paid 605, 610. These people would have paid, 1,500. So we've lost a whole load of, although we've sold loads, and that's great, we could have done better. Now, where is our profit on that? Can anybody write in the box where the profit, write in the text, the comments box, where is your profit on my diagram before I reveal it? Anybody?
Probably a little delay in people typing, but let's see if anyone's gonna.
Maybe they've all logged off. Maybe they've all thought he's talking a load of rubbish.
No, I can still see them. They're all still
there. Is anybody going to say where they think the profit is on my diagram? If not, I'll show you anyway.
My money's on.
What do you reckon, Alex?
Greg. Chris
at Solo Timber says the top third. But if that's my price and that's my cost, where's my profit? I'm going to show you. Red, yeah, green minus red, X num lines above green. I think Fox is probably right. Between the lines. Yeah, the rectangle. Yeah. Absolutely. Well done, Abbas. From India, I seem to remember you were Abbas Sinha. Yeah. So it's basically, if I can get it to do it, it's that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because these people didn't buy it. And I've lost them. I could have had that bit of money there if I was cheaper. But it's this, isn't it? So each person, I'm making that much profit on each person. That's my profit. I've lost all that. There is a time lag. That's what it is. And I've lost all of this. Now, what should I do to be better? And the answer is charge more and see what happens. I've lost that and I've lost that. That's all the money that I could have had that I didn't get. Okay, because these people didn't buy from me. That's fine. These people got a bargain. So let's see what happens now if I charge this price. Ooh. Now, where is my profit? Well, it's going to be that, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I've lost all this. All these people now can't afford me. I've lost all that. I'm gutted. But this is my profit now. By the way, I've also lost. I'm still losing money on these people as well. But I've got this. Now, am I better off? And I think you can see that I am, because this is about half as long, but it's more than twice as high, isn't it? Can you see that? Also, I'm only doing half as much work. I'm making more profit for half the work. If I'm a one-man band, I can spend 2 or 3 days on the beach every day, every week, I mean. Cool. 3 days a day would be good. But no, 2 or 3 days a week, I can just spend down on the beach because I'm only working half the time and I'm making more money. This is fantastic. If it was a company, I could either fire half my workforce, or even better, I could keep them and I could use them to develop new products and to deliver fantastic customer care and do all those sorts of things and work on how to reduce my costs. And there's all kinds of useful things they could do instead of being busy fools selling stuff at a low price. So that's the first thing. Now, obviously, I'm thinking, well, this is good. What if I charge even more? What if I charge this much? What's going to happen then? And the answer is, I'm only going to sell that many. I've lost all this that I could have had. And I've lost even a little bit more I could have charged from these people. But I think you can see now that that's not as good as the one before. If I just go back to the one before, can you see that this is smaller than that? It's not massively smaller. If you're a one-man band, you could actually make a bit less money, but have loads of time off, because this is all of you're on the beach all week now. You're doing 1 day a week working, and you're making nearly as much money as you had when you worked 2.5 days a week. But you are making less profit. So the conclusion of this is the optimum profit is where you lose half your business on price. Okay, half your business. That's where you want to be. Now, sales won't like that. The salespeople will hate it. And if you're selling yourself, if you're a one-person band, you're going to feel gutted every time you quote a price. And 50% of customers say, sorry, I can't pay that. But you've got to hold the line, because that's your point of optimum profit, especially as the ones you don't get are actually going to be the higher maintenance people. Said. But you want to be at a point where you're losing half your business on price. And that feels scary. It feels bad. But always tell yourself, if you're succeeding with most of your quotes, your prices are too low, you're leaving money on the table for everyone else. All those people are saying yes, are laughing at how cheap you are, and they would have paid you more. So think of the extra you could have been having from those people who you got if you charged them more. It's okay to lose some in order to make more on the others. That's what you've got to do. Otherwise, you're a busy fool. And the ones you lose are the ones you don't want anyway, because they don't understand you or they don't appreciate quality. Now, an extra thing that makes this even more difficult, actually, is that sales will say it was price when it wasn't. Now, why would they do that? And the answer is, if a salesperson doesn't do a very good job, turns up late, is a bit scruffy, does a pretty crap description of the product, if they don't get the order, they're going to come back and go, yeah, it was price. Yeah, he wouldn't pay the price. They're not going to say, well, I was a bit crap and I didn't get the order. They're going to blame it on price. It's an easy get out. So sales will tell you it was price when it wasn't. So if you want to lose 50% on price, you need 60 or 70% of the salespeople to be saying it was price, because then it's probably really 50. And not only that, but customers will also say it was price when it wasn't. Because customers will say, I love it, but it's just too expensive. They won't say, I don't think you've got a very good product, or I don't like your salesperson. I mean, they will sometimes, but quite often customers are polite and they'll just say, thanks, but it's a bit expensive. So it's an easy option. So it seems to me that really we want to be hearing 60 or 70% of people saying it was price, because then it's probably really about 50, and then we're on the sweet spot. So don't worry if somebody says you're too expensive. That's fine. It's great. You need to worry if you don't hear that. Oh, this is quite a hard-hitting little talk, isn't it? I hope that's been useful for you to see, but I haven't finished yet. Now, I just thought I would show you an example here. Let's suppose that you're going to go into a wasp nest removal business. This is the last bit of my talk. It's going to take a little bit of time. Bear with it, but it'll change your life once you understand this. Now, let's suppose it costs me £60 to remove a wasp's nest from inside somebody's attic, because I've got to go in there. I've got to pay a guy. I'm not doing it. So I've got to pay a bloke in a suit to go in there and puff poison. And he drives around in a van, and we've got some marketing, and there's all sorts of costs. So it cost me 60 quid, right? So I've got a choice of prices I could charge. Now, let's suppose these are my four options. I could charge 70, 90, 140, or 199. Now, what price do you think I should charge? Can you just type into the text box what price you think I should charge? And then we'll do some calculations and we'll work it out in a minute. So 60 is my total cost, everything all in, all my fixed and my variable costs. Now, while you're starting to type, William says 199. Oh, I like it. So let's have a look at this. Now, first of all, we can work the profits out, can't we? Oh, 140. Interesting. Oh, yeah. With this one, I'm only making £10 profit, aren't I? Or dollars, whatever you want to measure it in thousands of rupees, possibly. This one here, we're making 30, we're making 80, we're making 140. Obviously, we're going to sell more at this price, aren't we? Because this is a bargain. But the question is, what's going to maximize our profit? Everyone reckons 140. Oh, Natasha reckons 90. So let's have a look. Now, the next column, I'm going to have to guess a little bit. But I'm going to put some percentages in. Now, this is a total guess. And I would say, first of all, for your market, it might be different. You've got to work these out. There's a way you can find them out. And I'll come to that in a minute. Rakesh is 115. Interesting. I didn't say you could have a price.
It's gone off piste.
Although you can have in between. Why not? Funnily enough, I'm going to come to that as well in a minute. So good audience, though. I love those comments. Well done, everybody. So I reckon if you're charging 70 quid, you're probably going to get 90% of quotes. There's going to be 10% of weirdos who won't even pay 70 quid, even though it's a total bargain. When you get to 90 quid, it's only 20 quid more. You're probably going to still sell 60%, I reckon. When you get to 140, it's starting to get quite pricey, maybe 30%. And by the time you get to 200 quid, you're only going to sell 10%. You're going to get the occasional weirdo or the occasional person who's desperate. Maybe they've got, a barbecue starting in an hour's time and their boss is coming to the barbecue and they've just got to get rid of the wasps or something. And so you'll probably sell a few at that price. And there'll be some sort of percentage like that. Now, if we now work out our profit, let's suppose for every, 10 people who are, or every 100 people who ring up and say, how much is a wasp nest? And you say it's 140 quid, you're going to get 30 of those 100, aren't you? So let's say that's how many we sell. And that's the profit we're making. You can multiply and you can see here's the profit, 900, 1800, 2400 and 1400. So well done, everyone who said 140, because of these four choices, 140 gives me the biggest profit. Although I'm only selling a third of the incoming phone calls, I'm making more profit. And I've got plenty of time off to go down to the beach, of course. And, these people up here are just busy fools. They're doing 3 times as much work and they're making, only a third of the profit. My God, that's crazy. Now, they're offering a lovely service to society. And I think, there are some types of work like the NHS, of course, where, we want to help as many people as we can. But if you're in this for profit, if you're running a business, then this would tell me charge 140. Now, you can do this calculation for your products, whatever your prices would be for whatever you're selling. Your costs. Then you can work out the profit and then quantity sold. And you can experiment. So wouldn't it be interesting if you were doing wasp nests? Wouldn't it be interesting if you just charged more on Wednesdays and put your price up from 90 to 140 on Wednesdays and just see what proportion, what hit rate you get? Or everybody who rings up who's not got a name beginning with C, just charge them more and just see what happens. And then just keep a log and work out your percentage. And if you find that when you go from 90 to 140, you only sell half as much, that's great. You're making more profit. So you could log that and see. And that's what I did when I put my price up about a year ago, and everybody said yes. So that was interesting. So that I think is an amazing little chart, and you could do it for your area. So, take a screenshot of it or whatever, or have another look at this presentation and make your own one of these. I'll leave it up in the corner for a bit longer as I make some comments. So my thoughts are, first of all, the optimum choice is where you're only getting 30%. You're losing 70% on price. That's the first thing but do you remember I was saying you should be losing about 50% on price based on my lineup of people? And it might be, where is the 50% point? And in fact, one of the guys who commented, it was Greg on 160. Yeah, I don't know, he could be right. But the 50% point, I would say, is somewhere in between here. It might be at 110, it might be at 120, I don't know. Somewhere in between here would be the price where you would only be losing 50%. And I've done a little extra calculation. If it's at 110, then you're making £50 and you're selling 50. So you'd be making 2,500, which is better. And if it's at 120, then you're making £60 and you're selling 50. And that's 3,000. That's a lot better. So I think if this is a graph, the peak of the graph is in between these 2 points somewhere. It's probably at 120. So the best price is probably 120. And then you'd be selling 50%. So you can see my little theory about you should lose 50% on price is proved right by this graph. And I didn't fiddle it. I honestly didn't. I just put in some numbers. But don't believe me. Work it out for yourself. Work it out for your own and test it. So all you do is you just try it. Just do it. Just charge 110 and see what you get, and charge 140 and see what you get, and just choose the one that gives you the most profit. By the way, if a price of 110 gives me a profit of 2,500, which I worked out there, didn't I? And if a price of 140 gives me 2,400, I think I would choose the 140. I'm making £100 less, But can you see the difference? Because 110, I'm having to do more work, aren't I? That's the point. Because 140, I'm only doing 30 wasp nest, but at 110, I'm having to do 50 wasp nest. I'm doing almost twice as many wasp nests for another 100 quid. And is it worth it? If I really need that 100, then I would do it. But if I'm not too bothered, I'd be tempted to spend time on the beach and do less work and make nearly as much profit. So anyway, once you understand it, you can make your choices scientifically, can't you? Oh, I can see Alex going, ooh, there as he thinks about it.
I was thinking, are you basing this on the wasp nest that was in my attic when we moved into this house?
Was there one? I didn't know that.
It was, yeah.
Is never try to remove a wasp nest yourself. It's not a job for an amateur.
No, send a wife. Is that? No,
they fly as fast as a speeding bullet. If they come straight at you, there's nothing you can do. So definitely pay a man, even if it costs £199. I would do it. So it's just an example, but I think that's interesting, isn't it? So what I get from this is experiment with your price to work out the optimum. Well, first of all, come up with your theory and then test it. Work out the best place and then put your price up and down a bit and just work out where the sweet spot is. But it'll probably be where you're losing 50% of business on price, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Make one of these charts for your business. Guess it, surprise yourself, then test it. Right. Now, I've got a final thought. Well done, everybody, for sticking with this. Final thought. Instead of the best price for where we are. So let's suppose you're making Reliant Robins. For people who don't know about those, they were a really terrible 3-wheeled car. They had them, what was the Only Fools and Horses? The guy had a yellow one. But Del Boy had a yellow one, didn't he?
Trotter and Sons.
Yeah. But if you're making, a really crap product, you should charge more and sell fewer. So the price for the Reliant Robin ought to be set at the point where 50% of people won't buy it. 50% of people who are interested in it will think, actually, I'm not going to pay that much for it. But clearly, there's more you can do. Why not improve your Reliant Robin and start making a BMW quality car instead? So if you can raise the whole game, then that's worth doing. If you can raise what people will pay, raise the 50% point. So if you can offer better quality, then the point where 50% of people will pay is going to be higher. And if you can give better service with what you do. So, let's say I've got a guy who's doing work on my house and he does good quality work, but he never answers the phone and he's miserable. My friend who actually does work on my house is really nice, by the way. But suppose he was miserable and just, unreliable, then he'd have to drop his price for me to hire him. So if you can have really good service and really good quality, then there's a higher point where you're at 50%. And similarly, if your marketing's really good, then people are going to pay more because that affects how much people will pay if things are more desirable. So it's worth trying to up your whole game. And so in this talk, I'm not saying ignore everything else. I'm saying try to be as good as you possibly can. And then when you've done that, charge a price where 50% of people won't pay it. Become BMW. So here's an example. And I've got, I'd forgotten I put the Reliant Robin in the presentation. There it is. So you can see what I've done. If I can improve the quality of what I do and the service I provide with it, then the price at which half the people, everyone, they're all prepared to pay more. Can you see I've just lengthened all the lines there? And then the price at which half of them say I'm not paying that is a lot higher. And I'm just making a lot more profit from the top half of the people. So it is a no-brainer to try to improve what you do in every way, not just putting your price up, but wherever you're at the moment, your price should be losing half on business. So we talked about how sensitive it is. We talked about how we've got loss makers we want to get rid of. We talked about losing half on business, and we did a real example where we could actually work it out with Wasp Nest. And we also spent a little bit of time working out who the loss makers are by apportioning your costs across all your customers. So the conclusion is small changes in price have a massive effect on your profit, because your profit is only small compared to your turnover. Never cut your prices to sell more, because you won't sell enough more for it to be worth doing. If you cut your price if this Coke went down from 70p to 60p, it wouldn't make much difference to how many people bought it. It wouldn't make any difference to how much I buy. So never cut your prices to sell more. Then identify your loss makers and target them, put the price up. Aim to lose 50% on price. That's quite a painful idea, but it's true. And then test the effect of pricing by experimenting. Charge more on Wednesdays, charge more to people whose name begin with F or whatever it is. And then measure the percentage you lose on price so that you're scientific about it. And then constantly be trying to raise the whole game. I don't know why I've put the twice, but anyway, raise the whole game by offering better quality and better service and better marketing. So you still lose 50%, but at a higher price point. And that is it. That's the higher price point. That is it for my presentation. If you want me to send you a copy of the slides, you can point your phone at that, and I think it'll work. But obviously, you can revisit this presentation as often as you like as well. And do check out all the other people that Alex has got, because he's had some amazing people on these podcasts. He's had so many, I haven't been able to keep up with it, actually. But
neither have I.
Do you know how many have you done, Alex? Do you know how many podcasts you've done now?
I reckon now we did the 100th episode about 2 weeks ago, so it's got to be about 120 now.
Yeah.
In 8 weeks. Well, yeah.
100 podcasts, of which this has been the best one. No, anyway, so I hope everybody liked that. I'm just going to go back to me in a minute, but you will lose that little thing there. But you can also get me to send you the slides by just emailing me. And if you just go to chriscroft.com, you can find me and my blog, and there's loads of stuff about prices and lots of other things. And you can email me, chris@chriscroft.com, and you'll be able to get that. So I'm going to click on stop sharing now. I'm back.
Hey, there we go.
So I hope that made sense, everybody. Did that make sense? We did a bit of maths, a bit of crazy stuff. But I just hope you remember the idea of finding the loss makers or lining them up and thinking the price, or you remember the wasp nest idea of being a busy fool. Hopefully one of those sort of ways of thinking about it would have struck home. That's what I hope.
Yeah, I was busy taking screenshots and writing some notes myself, and one is definitely underpricing one's services. So
I don't know if you want to share, Alex, but what price do you charge for making a podcast, say? I mean, just as an example.
Yeah, so three options. So 1,499 up to 2,999 for like a whole series of podcasts, with the music, the artwork, the editing, the production.
But what I'm thinking is, if somebody's prepared to pay 1,500, then they're going to pay 1,600, aren't they? They're not going to go, I'm not doing it because the extra 100 quid.
Yeah, you're right.
Or 1,700. And I used to charge 700 a day for training courses. And if you've got 10 people, it's only 70 quid a head. And you've got 20 people, it's only 35 quid a head. And I sort of edged up to 800 and 900 and 950. And I thought, is there a psychological barrier at 1,000? And I was quite worried when I went through 1,000. Loads of people go, I'm not paying 1,000 quid for a training course, even though it's still only, 50 quid a head if you've got 20 people. And I finally went through and I thought, if I'm going to go to 1,000, I might as well go to 1,100. So I put my prices up from sort of 950 to 1,100. Nobody batted an eyelid. They just didn't care. Didn't make any difference. I didn't lose a single one. And so A, I wasn't charging enough, but B, there wasn't a psychological barrier. And, if you're buying cars, is there a barrier between 29,000 and 31,000? And I don't think there is in the end. I mean, you really want that BMW, and whether it's 29 or 31, if you're in that market anyway for that type of car, or if you're buying a second-hand car, whether it's, 8,000 or 9,000 or 9.5 or 1,100, I don't think you need to worry about it. So, 100 quid here and there, you should whack a few hundred on all those podcasts straight away, I think. Anyway, just a thought.
Yeah. No. I always remember back like when I started my first business 10 years ago now, and we had a subscription-based online business for health and fitness professionals, and we started it off at like $49.99 a month. And then we just started playing around with the pricing and found that more people paid for £99 than they did for £49. It was exactly the same service.
Perceived quality. Yeah, you don't want to be too cheap. Can I answer a question that I've just noticed come up? Which is, what about competitive tendering?
Yeah, and I've got some private ones as well that have come through on the Ask a Question button that I can fire at you as well when you're ready.
Competitive tendering, I can pick and choose a bit because I've only got 5 days a week to sell. In fact, less than that, because I don't want to work every day. And so I can pick and choose. So I never do tenders anymore. I used to, but even if you're doing tendering, the same rules apply. You want to lose half your tenders on price. Never lose a tender because your tender was crap. I mean, that's unforgivable. But you want to lose half of them on price because that's where the maximum profit is going to be. But the other thing about tendering is it has much higher costs than you realize. It probably takes you a week to write the tender document. So you must make sure that that contract is going to be profitable. And I worked out that the customers who I tender for and the customers who I don't varied hugely in profitability. So the ones who I tendered for, I had to come quite low in price to get the job, and there were big costs for all the tendering, and they were just actually loss making. Whereas the customers who liked me and just got me in each time regularly, they were profitable. And I could do theirs cheaper as well, because with the tender, I got to add a load of money on to cover my costs. So I ended up deciding that tendering just wasn't profitable for me, and I didn't do it anymore. And I think all the best people don't tender. So I think if you put stuff out to tender, all you get is the people who are desperate for work. You're getting all the crap people to compete between themselves for your contract, and they're all adding cost on as well. So I think asking people to tender is a bad idea, and I think applying for tenders is a bad idea. But I do get the fact that sometimes everybody in your market puts stuff out to tender. It's the only way you can get work, in which case you have to play that horrible, pointless, random game, because it's not even the best way to choose a supplier, is it? To look at a glossy document they've sent in. I mean, I hate tendering. But if you've got a choice of tenders or not, I just would give up tendering. And I know those are big contracts, but they're big, but not very profitable. And if you're not careful, you could end up with a contract that's big and loss making, like my albatross in my example I did just now. And the last thing you want is a contract that's big and loss making. I'd rather have a small loss making contract. So I think you've got to be really, really careful about tendering. Check your costs, and also feel fine about losing half on price. That's fine. That's what you want to do. That would be my answer. Barcode didn't work. Yeah. But just email Chris at chriscroft.com, and I will, I'll send you that. I'll send you all the slides if you couldn't get the barcode. I think it's probably quite grainy on the screen. That might be why.
There we go.
Yeah.
Let me find these questions for you, Chris.
And it's probably, we've been doing this an hour, so probably should finish soon, I guess. But I'm up for a bit more if you are.
Cool. Yeah, I'm good. Oliver, Singapore. Crikey, we've got another country here. Oliver from Singapore. I've just been made redundant and think the industry, project management in offshore/marine industry, will be going freelance. How should I calculate my day rate for contract work?
Well, I think ask other people and find out what the going rate is. And then don't be the cheapest. When I started out in training, I just guessed. And I sort of started, I put about 400 a day, and my diary just went poof. So I knew I was too cheap. So just put a few quotes out at different prices and experiment, or go for cheap to start with. But if you get everything, then put your price up early. I filled up my diary with people who were cheap. And then it was quite hard to raise the prices on those customers. I was charging more for new customers, but I didn't get any churn because I was really cheap. They all loved me and they kept coming back. So it's really hard to get rid of cheap customers. And of course, in the end, you've got to say to them, look, sorry, guys, I'm having to put the price up because I'm turning away work at a higher price somewhere else. And that's what I did. But it was quite difficult to put the prices up for the ones I already had. So
yeah, and that probably comes into
cheaply. If you get every job, put the price up. But can I just say one more thing, which is going freelance will be the best thing you ever did. It's so great to not have a boss who keeps half the money. So if you go freelance, you've got all the money. And if you've got a number of customers, you're actually quite secure. You don't have one boss who can fire you because they feel like it. You've got a whole load of customers. If you lose one, it doesn't matter. It's almost good. Have some time off.
Yeah.
So going freelance, I would strongly recommend. I think it's the best thing I ever did. It doesn't suit everybody because you have to be able to do something and sell it. But if you can do and sell, freelance is the way to go. Another question, Alex?
Yeah, Abbas says, and it probably follows right on from that, would this also apply to those who are still trying to build a customer base and don't already have one?
I think it would. I think you don't want to build a customer base really quickly with loss-making customers. You know, you saw from my WASP example, you make as much money working 2 days a week as you do working 5. So I wouldn't rush to build a huge number of customers. I think you want to take good customers. And it's amazing anyway how you'll get referrals. If you've got good customers who understand you and like you, and if you do a good job, they will refer you to other people and they move to other companies and they bring you in. And so I wouldn't panic and fill up your diary with badly paid work.
No, agree.
Stay strong.
Daniel from Budapest, do you have, it kind of comes to the previous one, do you have any specific advice on setting a price for IT consulting, which I would like to start doing as a freelancer? Can I quote lower to get experience reference? I think we kind of cover it really, don't we?
Yeah, I think you do have to probably start a bit lower and work your way up the pricing. But I think Alex said something really good, which is perceived value. So if you charge more, people will just assume you're better. And if you are good, that's great. You know, whereas if you sell yourself cheaply, they'll just think, well, he's probably not very good. So I do think that be brave on your pricing. And once you've sold a few, I mean, it's very weird selling yourself, isn't it? Because I could sell you this and say it's brilliant. But to actually say I'm expensive, I mean, I find it utterly weird that people will pay £1,000 a day for me. But of course, they're not paying for me, really, are they? They're paying for what I tell them. And, you know, if they make £1,000 more profit because of a project going well or pricing, it's worth it for them. But nevertheless, if you're selling yourself, it does feel more embarrassing and tricky. But you've just got to hold the line and imagine you were selling someone just like you. Yeah. And keep thinking 50% of people have got to say they can't afford me, and then I've got it right.
Yeah. Lots of freelance questions. Who's this one from? I can't see a name, but it says, hi, I'm an artist. I'm doing fine as a freelancer. I'm also thinking about having scalable business model and passive income. Chris, do you comment on this?
Passive income's the thing if you can do it. Yeah, I'm just so much I could tell you in so little time. I've got some training courses on udemy.com, UDEMY. And they bring in passive income, and a typical course on Udemy can bring in 500 quid a month or 1,000 quid a month. And a really good course on Udemy can bring in several thousand a month. If you've got all things in 1,000 quid a month, that's 10, 12 grand a year. You know, if you've got 2 or 3 of those, you don't have to work ever again. So I do think if you can work some way of finding passive income, it's absolutely brilliant. That's the holy grail, and it's really worth it. And almost anything that you do, you could set up some sort of online system that would do that. So that's the dream. But the other thing I would say is I've tried selling video training courses on my own website and selling them on places like Udemy and LinkedIn Learning. And so if I sell a course on Udemy, it only sells for 10 quid and I get 3. It's all I get, £3 for a course. Whereas if I sold it myself, I could probably sell it. If it's like 20 videos, I could probably sell it for 50 as opposed to 3. But the problem is I don't have the footfall on my website. It's very hard to sell stuff from your own website. You could do a whole lot of Google ads and everything, but that's a whole minefield of money. And it's much better to take the 3 quid from Udemy because they have literally millions of people a day going in there. So if you sell just say 30 courses a day on Udemy and you make 3 quid, that's £100 a day. And so what's 300 days a year times 100? That's 30 grand a year. Passive, so you've only got to sell 30 a day on Udemy, and Udemy's just got thousands of people going there. So I think passive income, it probably sold through somebody else's big site, big portal is probably the way to go rather than trying to sell it through your own website. But that's a whole other question, and I'm not really an expert on that. That's just what I found with training, if that helps anybody.
Yeah. Other than that, I'm just having a kind of a look now. Best webinar I have watched all lockdown, says William. Thank you, William. Yeah, Martin.
Somebody's put YouTube is good for word of mouth. I totally agree. Definitely put things on YouTube. And Google loves YouTube. They're owned by the same company, I think.
Yeah.
So if you give your video, for example, I made a video called I Love Gantt Charts. Sorry, but I did. In fact, it's called Why I Love Gantt Charts. But if you search Google for I Love Gantt Charts, I come out #1 in the world because of that. So if you've got a video on, you know, how to reseal Coke cans or something, call the video that, because then when people search for how to reseal Coke cans, you'll come up #1 on Google. So YouTube is a really good way to get up the search engine. And I think YouTube is definitely underrated as a way to publicize what you do. Yeah, I really agree with Sejitcom there. Sejitcom.
Yeah, I was trying to pronounce that as well. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you for that one. Yeah, I think you answered the others as we went through, didn't you? So, I mean, loads of comments as we were working through.
Yeah, somebody's put, would you reduce your price to get a one-off to get in?
Yes.
You've got to be really careful about that, because it does demean you. There's a customer down the road actually called Frizzell's. What are they called now? They're called LV, aren't they?
LV, the insurers,
Victoria,
yeah.
Liverpool, Victoria, LV, and they have a really useless trainer doing their project management. And I rang them up and I said, look, I'll do a day for you for nothing, because I know that you'll love it and you'll hire me forever after that. I'm sick of driving past your building and not doing your training. I'll do it for nothing. Do you think they took me up on it?
No.
No, they said, oh, no, that's far too weird. Oh, no, we don't like the sound of that. And they obviously thought I was some sort of desperate person. Look, I'm famous. I'm me. I'm going to do a free day. It's worth thousands. No, didn't want to know. So the problem is you demean yourself if you cut the price. And also then they'll expect it cheap forever. So I think you've got to be really careful. I think you've got to find other ways to sell to them. I mean, you know, free samples and stuff you can do. So, you know, I'm not being paid for this. I'm doing it partly for fun and partly because it'll probably lead to work. So I think it is okay to do free stuff and marketing and all that. That's fine. That's great. But I think when you actually sell it, I think you've got to say to them, look, this is how I earn my living and I've got to charge a decent price for this. And you can always say, look, if you don't like it, I'll refund it, you know, because obviously it's going to be great. It's not going to be a problem. But I think you've got to be very careful about cutting the price in order to get the order. And I think a customer who asks you to do that is likely to be a pain. I don't really want customers that try to make me do that. And I wouldn't offer it. That would be my answer to that question.
Yeah, agreed.
Fighting talk. But that's how it's got to be. You know, most people can't afford you, and that's their loss. You know, the guy in the Ferrari showroom doesn't go, oh, no, somebody said they couldn't afford a Ferrari. We'll have to cut the price. Oh, no. You know, he just thinks, okay, you know, some people can't afford it. That's fine. They can dream until one day they can afford one. And that's what you got to be like. They can dream until they can afford you to come in and do stuff for them. That's how it's got to be.
Yeah, just think of the 50% that Chris has been drumming into us throughout this, everybody.
You know it's true. Cheers, Oliver. Cheers, William. A few people are going, but it's been good for you all, your audience.
Dinner time for them.
My dinner's nearly ready here.
That's what I learned, says Yang. Yes, so a few questions with regards to replays. Literally, as soon as I press end broadcast, it will be available. So spread the word, send a link.
Show it to your friends, show it to your boss, show it to people who work for you, show it to your salespeople. Say to them, it's fine if you lose business on price. I'm fine with that. I don't want you to get every order. So yeah, spread the word, show it to as many people as you can.
Yeah, and if you're on Facebook, this is a good thing. We've been doing this recently. If you're on Facebook, where you can also watch this live as soon as it ends, you can start what's called a watch party and share it on your own timeline, so that all of your friends can watch it as well, and it will live on there in perpetuity. So do share it from the Festival of Enterprise Facebook page if you're on Facebook. Lots of people saying thanks. Chris, Esther, Fox, Garfield, Anna, Chris, Abbas, Yang, William. Awesome. Okay. Well, Chris, thank you once again.
I'll see you again, or I'll see you on LinkedIn Learning or somewhere like that. Connect to me on LinkedIn as well. Find me on LinkedIn and connect. Do that.
Chris Croft, dead easy.
Bye
All
for
right.
now, you all.
Bye for everyone. Cheerio. Thanks, Chris.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.